Well, thank you, everyone, for sticking around to hear an update on where we are with the capital campaign and building renovations. I am here as the financial side of things, fundraising. Matt is leading our new steering committee that has kind of literally taken the ball and moved forward to press things forward.
You got that.
Just to remind you where we have been. In October, we were all gathered here and voted to move forward with the work that was outlined in the facilities assessment and the master plan. December into January, we launched the capital campaign in earnest. We had a goal of 100% member participation in financially supporting this effort. And just a couple of weeks ago, we announced that we have pledges of $1.26 million. The primary goal of the campaign is to make sure that this building and our ministries are active for the next 50 years and beyond. When we think about the building and we think about all the things that we want to do to the building, it has purpose. It's to be welcoming, all those things that you see listed up there. But of utmost importance, above all of that, is we are here to make disciples, share God's love, and bring hope to others. That's what this is all about. It's not necessarily about making it pretty, although that will happen. And so that's kind of where we've been, and I'm going to pass it off to Matt and his team to lead us through the rest of what we have to share with you.
Thank you, Eric. And I thought today's sermon, Pastor Jenny's sermon today, I took a note. She was talking about having a welcoming space and a welcoming presence to allow God and allow folks to be able to come to our church and be able to have that spirit brought to them. And I really think that's at the root of what we're talking about. So just to revisit, I thought it would be good to throw a picture up here to give everybody kind of calibrated since where we've been in October. Back in October, we showed a master plan that was put together by the architects at Stracka Johnson out of Dubuque. And this was the pre-design phase. So think of this as concepts. They interviewed many people from our church. They learned about our flows. They learned about our ministries and our mission and what was working in our space, what was needed to be improved in our space. And then they also took a very good inventory of our major maintenance areas. So just like a house that was built in the 60s, right? Our church has been in phases since the 1960s. We're at a point in our church building that we need some major renovations. And Stracka has been instrumental in helping us understand what the impacts of those things are. So major maintenance items, I'm not going to use a laser pointer here, but the major maintenance items that we're talking about are our HVAC systems are dated and of all different types throughout the building. We use galvanized pipes, which was common back in the 60s and 70s. So actually under the foundation in the concrete are galvanized piping, which is rusting through and deteriorating and needs a replacement. Major systems, siding, and windows are all major maintenance areas that we've been looking at. Renovation items include what you see on the picture here, which is a revised sanctuary space, narthex, for being able to welcome new members. Our own members have dedicated fellowship space, as well as dedicated pathways and inherent more safety, meeting more safety requirements. Now, this is an eye chart, but this is what our steering committee has been spending a lot of time focused on. The work could really be broken down into these three areas, which are major maintenance areas. There's a chunk of site preparation work, which is actual moving of earth and doing some new infrastructure on the exterior of the building, or not the exterior, but the site itself, like the parking lot and walkways. And then the building renovation itself, which is the lion's share of the cost. So this is all based on projections from the architects. So there's no bids here. There haven't been any general contractors that have looked at the numbers yet. That is what we're looking at in the next phase that we're going to talk about here in the upcoming slides.
And Matt, I will also add that those estimates are now a year old. It was a year ago that we pulled that information together.
Yeah, so just like everything else in life, the longer we wait, the more that price kind of creeps. One analogy that I'd throw out here is as we look at our space and the different phases that this building has been added on to, when you go and look at renovating, it's really like a 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. You got to have a plan before you enter into this type of thing, because one space affects another, which affects another. As an example, on the major maintenance costs, one of the major maintenance cost drivers is redoing all the plumbing for the main restroom areas that have been there since the original building. Well, you don't want to do that work twice. So you have to do it in the spirit of how do you want to move spaces and then accommodate and only do that work once. So this puzzle is what we have to put together, and we're going to need some strong partners to be able to work through that puzzle. And we'll get to that here in a moment. So this is of course, we have to balance all this work with the finances. And the pledge campaign, Eric and I have been putting out the information a couple weeks ago that we were at that target of $1.26 million, and that represents about 32% of our congregation's giving units. And so the financial side of me says, how do we go and project where we could be? Which is a lot of analyzing the data and trying to figure out where we'll be with continued participation from those that have not yet participated. So if you think about it, on the left-hand side of this chart is what we're doing is working through and analyzing that data to figure out where we'll be. On the right side of this is you have to have a measure, something that you're keeping in mind as a check and balance of, are we in a good spot in our congregation to be able to take on this amount of work or not? The 4/3 model is a model that the Iowa Conference has used and adapted across many building projects throughout the state of Iowa. And the 4/3 model focuses on the right balance between having assets on hand, assets that have been pledged to the project, and the assets that could be financed if financing is required. Okay, so right now we're in the middle. I would say we're still in the throes of our capital campaign. We are by no means done with a capital campaign, but we can't wait to pull the trigger on planning and getting into detailed design. So the intent here is to continue to work on the capital campaign as we progress with the design elements and actually getting to bidding work so we can actually have hard numbers to be able to plan against. Are you following me there? Okay. So those are the two sides to think through. So the path forward, I talked about trusted partners, and this is a big puzzle that we're going to have to work through. The way we're going to do that is through this triad kind of approach. Right in the middle is Lovely Lane. We are going to be in the center of this thing, and we will have to have a very active participation in this project. Strategically, what we've done is aligned ourselves with Stracka Johnson. Stracka Johnson's been with us through the concept phase. They've been proactive in reaching and learning more about our ministry and our missions and what makes our church click. And that's been a great effort that kind of culminated last October, and we've re-engaged them here this spring. Another element, you see on the top of the triangle there is the Iowa United Methodist Foundation. Some of you have heard and participated in some of the work groups with Catherine Yarnell, who is the director of that foundation. The Iowa United Methodist Foundation is focused on helping fund and apply programming and resources to projects within the Iowa United Methodist Church. They have the means to be able to do financing if that's required. but they're really focused on helping with fundraising, putting programs out there, and helping us along the way with our capital campaign. And then the third element of this is general contractor. We have not selected yet a general contractor. We are in the midst of identifying candidates, and we're going to be interviewing, and you'll see that on the timelines that I have moving forward. So these are the three, what I'll call essential elements of that triad. Now, one thing that people have been asking in the hallway, why Stracka Johnson? What it really boils down to is a fit. In these kind of relationships, we're looking for a very good fit, somebody that understands our congregation, understands our needs, has kind of been there, done that. But then, let's just face it, we have a unique architecture. And I think you could see from these are pictures from the Stracka Johnson website. They are well equipped to be able to give us ideas on how to be able to design and make this space as functional as it can be from the work that they've done in the past. Let's see. Next slide. There we go. Okay. All right, so here we get into some meat and potatoes. There's a lot of words on this, I understand. But I'm a detailed guy, so you're going to have to bear with me. So the way to look at this is if this was a set of phases to what we're going to be doing here, you have a phase one, which is really planning, trying to do the pre-design, understanding where your needs are at, kind of establishing that initial budget. Complete. That's what we did in October, culminated in October, and then entered into the capital campaign phase. So that part is behind us. So what we're really talking about is phase two. Okay. Phase two is, you can imagine that a building of this size, you need blueprints. You need to actually have contractors get up and look and see what all they have to be changing and going into things eyes wide open and actually putting together the estimates for the work and getting into detailed design. That is the phase that we're going to be entering into this summer. After that phase two is complete, we get bids, we'll zero in on costs, and that's when we would enter into the construction phase. Now, the typical timeline here, I didn't put the block on there. Why are my... I put cute animations in there, that's why. My one thing that I put in there that would be flashy. At the end of the day, what phase two culminates in is bidding. We anticipate that this phase two area is going to take 6 to 8 months. So think of it by Christmas. We'll be in the area where we'll have bidding, we'll have some hard numbers, we'll be able to pull the trigger on making some big decisions as far as when we're going to start moving major parts of the church around. Okay. Oh, thanks, Eric. Okay. So that's a little bit about how this is going to work. Project organization. So remember I put our church is going to be a major part of this triad of folks that we have to pull together. What we're going to be needing from the congregation, and we're going to be talking to a lot of folks and hoping that you come to us this summer, is we're going to have to put together an organization to be able to go and tackle this project. So the core planning team, which is represented by that yellow circle there in the middle, the core planning team is going to have a group of 6 individuals, a chairperson, a financial-oriented person to help with the bookkeeping aspects of the project, a communication element, a technical and design element, as well as representatives from our trustees. That core planning team is the one that's responsible for making decisions. So we're not going to come to the congregation for beige versus gray color. That'll be decisions that'll be allocated to the core planning team. Now, they will be informed by our different mission areas. So you see those stakeholder teams, those are our different mission areas, from prayer, missions, or administration, hospitality, music, children's, and adult ministries. So those will be the teams where we're looking for a lot of participation from everyone in the congregation on, hey, let's make these trades, or here's the desires to make us more effective in our mission. But you have to balance that with the financials, right? So that's what the core planning is going to be doing, is striking a balance between, to be more mission effective, this is what we'll need. To be more office effective in how we administer our church, there's going to be balances that we have to make. So this will be an area where we're going to be looking for your all's help. Okay, a little bit about timeline. So we have some goals in front of us that we're working towards today. The first one that's going to be coming up is by I think that's the second week of July. We'll have that core team commissioned and ready to go, so those 6 individuals. We are on track to have the architecture sign a contract for the detailed design and contractor design artifacts. That's on track for July 11th. And we'll start the interview process for general contractors and have that done by August. The other thing that's important about this timeline is you see on there these report outs. Our plan is to do something like this, maybe not an all-church meeting, but have a video or opportunities to meet in the library to learn more about what's going on a quarterly basis. So you'll be hearing from that core team on a quarterly basis. So the next one will be on or around September 1st and as well as December 1st. And we'll keep that pace through the project to keep everybody informed. Okay? All right. So that really touches on the big things that I wanted to talk through today. We have an opportunity here to be able to, I want to talk more about the project. So based on what you've seen here, Eric's got the handheld mic, and we're going to open this up to questions and answers. Put it on the table. If we have the answer, we'll give it. If we don't have the answer, we'll take the action, and that'll be part of what we fold into our things that we're discussing as we go through the summer. And I'll also give an opportunity for Scott and Eric to add some feedback as well during that time. So, who's gonna fire first?
Who wants to start?
I'm curious about the scope of the project elements, like the money raised versus the whole project. What's your thoughts on that? You're like at 30-some%. I think initially it's like, well, the initial part of Blessed to be a Blessing was we'll spend the money as we get it. So what's the view now with this larger project and your thoughts on that and financing and all that? Could you give us an overview of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody get a chance to hear that. So how are we going to go tackle the difference? It really boils down to how are we going to tackle the difference between our pledged giving and where we see the total project. So one of the things we've had discussions about with Stracka Johnson here recently, and it was actually their recommendation it was a mutual agreement that we needed to bring a general contractor on board earlier, is that we do see a need for us to be able to, I'll call it stage this project, and have, I keep calling them off-ramps, of opportunities for us to be able to block out chunks of work on our highest need areas first, address those needs, and you do so in a way, though, that has a master plan in mind. Does that make sense? So we have to go into this with that master plan and that master design, but have these off-ramps of opportunities for us to be able to say, look, we need to have a break point at 1.5 million or whatever the right numbers are, but that's where the detailed design phase is really going to come into play. So you saw, so one of the elements in there is they called it I think they called it staged approach to the project. Because the other thing that has to come into play is we're still open for business, right? We have to let our ministries continue to be effective, both our children's ministries, our Sunday services, the things that happen in this church every night of the week and every day of the week. We have to figure out the right balance there to keep our ministries strong. So that's why it's important for us to bring on that general contractor earlier as part of this process, because they'll be able to help advise us on where those right break points are for the finances that we raise. The second point is, I guess I can't iterate enough, the capital campaign, we're not done. So there is going to be more information flowing out, and we're looking for ideas. We're looking for your all's participation and your time and talents to be able to help us understand how we can do the fundraising portions that we need. Fair enough? Okay.
As you saw with the level of participation in the low 30% area, we have an opportunity to reach out to some people yet, and we need help and ideas on how to do that. And that is compared to, it was 32%, wasn't it? As compared to the entire mailing list that we use. And when we did the capital campaign, I asked Sue for, give me the everyone list. Everyone who has any connection to the church, that's the list we use. And when you compare to giving units, we call them, a family or an individual who gives is a giving unit. When you compare the level of participation for the capital campaign to that, it's to those who give regularly every year, it's in the 40% area. That was my recollection. Mid-40s. Other questions? There are other opportunities for funds as well. There's memorials. We're going to talk a lot more with folks about how to leave a gift to the church in their will, because we don't do that enough, I don't think. I think we need to have those conversations. So there are other things we have in mind. What other questions do you have? Or comments? Doesn't even have to be a question.
Fire away.
Hi, I'm aware that there are, lots of folks are, I'm sure, that there are structural kind of demands that we just have to do something about right now. Plumbing, HVAC, I understand that, but I think I'm missing some. Could you give us a review on the things we don't have much choice about?
So, actually on the newest part of the building, the siding that faces Kennedy is curling up and falling off. And has water damage, and the windows in that area have some issues as well. So those are must-dos. But again, we have to go back to, we have to get this plan in place so that we don't do windows and siding in an area of the building that we're going to move a wall or push out, so that we're not paying and doing work twice. We've got to figure that out. Other items that we need to tackle. The windows in the fellowship hall are original to that room. That was the first building, and those are single panes of glass that are very energy inefficient. And when we do the siding, that's when you want to do the windows, so you're not taking off siding and putting windows in later. So that, and
I think those are the big ones.
Those are the big ones.
And we need to understand too that one of the actions we gave Straka as part of what we're putting in. Okay, so I'll go technical for a minute. So what I'm putting in the statement of work in the agreement is I want some of these parallel projects identified so we could tackle them earlier on. So there might be some things that we need to go do before winter sets in 2019, so we don't have some repeats of things that have cost us in the past. So in addition to the detailed design and them launching into what I'll call the bigger set of questions, they are going to address first the needs for picking out the siding, identifying the types of windows and those types of things we need to address the major maintenance items first, and then that way we can make decisions on them sooner than later with the trustees. Okay.
Glad I wore my quiet shoes today, not my squeaky ones.
I didn't understand your 40% number. Is that what is currently pledged for the general fund?
When you look at the number of people that we have a mailing list for, people who have a connection to the church, and the number of giving units that we have to the annual stewardship campaign to run the church each year, excuse me, I flipped them. Yep. So the number of people giving to this capital campaign versus the number of people who are giving to the general fund, I got to get my numbers. I think it's 47%.
Yeah. I'll ad lib for a minute.
Thank you,
Eric. Here's where my mind's at is. So I'm a very business-oriented person, right? So and the hardest part about understanding the church giving tendencies is there's a art to being able to predict exactly where our financial not just pledges, but what's going to come in above pledges. Because we reach out to everyone. Some folks don't respond immediately. Some people hesitate. They want to see different things or have their questions answered. So we're definitely in a mode of where we have to reach out and have those conversations with individuals. And we keep that information very protected as well. Like I only have visibility to what I'll call the bigger numbers, right? So we take those things very seriously.
I have numbers.
Okay.
I found them. So our mailing list is 330 people, 330 households. The annual stewardship campaign that runs the church throughout the year, of those 330 we contact, there are 154 who give, 47%. The capital campaign currently has 104 giving units, 32% compared to the mailing list.
And that's not give, it's pledge, right?
Pledges,
those that
yes.
Pledge, yep. You can't equate those that pledge to those that give.
So those are the numbers.
So you got about 2/3 to the capital of regular givers, well, 4 out of 154.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Gmail, for stuff.
Yeah, Chad.
Then can you go back to the timeline?
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Yeah, that one. So detailed design is not going to be complete until late in the year, but we're selecting a contractor prior to detailed design being available.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah, so I know where you're going. Let's talk about the role of that general contractor for a minute. There's two ways of going about being able to take on a project of this size and magnitude. One of them is you do all the architecture work. The architects put together all their drawings, they put together all their blueprints, and then they help us facilitate bids. And it goes to electricians, plumbers, general contractors, steel workers, you name it. We gather in all that data and we make decisions, and much like a municipality or a public identity, which usually puts you in the lowest bidder kind of situation. We've made the strategic decision to interview general contractors before we do the bidding, because what we're anticipating is with the age of our building, there's going to be decisions that the architects will think are easy, like removing those pillars right behind us, because this will be the main entryway into the sanctuary. An architect looks at that and says, nothing structural, no problem. We need a general contractor on board that says they're in agreement. And so this general contractor that we'll be selecting isn't necessarily bidding work and authorized to do work as much as it is, I think it's more of I forget the words that were in the AIA document, along the lines of a partnership or more like a retainer to be able to help us make good decisions about how we effectively go about the project.
And part of selecting the general contractor, our architects are fabulous. You met them last fall. We, as Matt said, have developed a great rapport with them. They want that next piece of the puzzle. They want that general contractor to be a good fit too. Somebody who understands us, good people who have experience doing things like this, who are going to work well with us. Those are the people who are going to be here for months and months and months, and we're going to have to work with. And we want that to be a good fit. So, and we need all that data ahead of time to be able to make those good decisions. So we want to enter into a partnership with a general contractor who will sit at the table with us and look at the plans and say, oh, that makes sense, or have you thought about this, or I did this on this project. So that's why we want to bring them in sooner so that we're making better decisions.
I won't mention them. I think another important element, just to add on to that, is one of the things that's come to my light is, so we've done a lot of projects here at our church, and we've got a lot of projects that are that we are aware of in our congregation that have taken place. One of the pieces of the feedback, Irv Moosman is part of our steering committee with Mary and Margaret and I. And when we did the addition of the children's wing 10, 15 years ago, 19 years ago, there you go, the choice was made at that time to align with the general contractor before construction documents and bidding and all those elements were done, for the exact same reason that we're entering into it, is because their previous experience was when you get into administration of all these different bids, you really want somebody that can bring the whole thing together, be a partner with you. And so we're taking some strong lessons learned from the last project that we did, and they had very predictable performance on both timelines and their financial budgets. And we want to make sure we do that same thing here. Did I answer it, Chad? All right.
Do you have any idea of how the construction will interfere with our Sunday services?
Well, that's one of the things that we've got to get figured out and plan out. Yeah. That's that whole staging approach as to what project is going to get done when. If this room is being worked on, we can't be doing anything in Fellowship Hall because that's where we're going to need to meet. We also have to be able to have safe access in and out when this is being worked on. So that's another detail. And another reason to bring the general contractor in. The architect said they're going to be able to look at the situation and say, oh, well, we could build a temporary wall right there to separate this, and that'll keep you safe and us safe, and you can use that room while we work on this. Things like that.
Yeah, I think that's all going to be part of the details. We're certainly going to have those as part of these quarterly reports, because I know everybody's going to be anxious about that. And I also want to emphasize that we're going to be recruiting the help and need the help of the other committees of the church. SPPRC, for example, if we're in a situation where, let's say for 3 weeks for some reason we can't meet in either the sanctuary or the Fellowship Hall area, we're going to need help to identify alternative locations to be able to conduct services. So those things will be planned out, announced well ahead of time, because that's probably 2 or 3 years down the road, right? But those are the kinds of things where we're going to be leaning on other parts of the congregation to help us out. So, okay.
Everyone's hungry, Matt. That's the problem.
Strategically placed in here.
And just a couple of things that have been on my mind too, with the bigger picture, is that our denomination right now is again going through some struggles, trying to kind of find where we are in some issues with human sexuality. And I think there's questions, what will our denomination look like? So maybe some of you are kind of hesitant to say anything, but you're thinking, what is our denomination going to look like, and how does it impact Lovely Lane? Why should I give my money to Lovely Lane if the denomination's going to kind of go in all these different directions? So maybe you've been thinking about that, and we're kind of hesitant to say something. And I guess the answer to that is I really don't know what the future brings with our larger denomination, but Lovely Lane will remain Lovely Lane. I mean, it could be that 2, 3, 4, or 5 years from now, the Methodist Church doesn't look like exactly like it looks like today. Maybe we're split up a little bit and got kind of different groupings here, but Lovely Lane will remain Lovely Lane. I mean, it could be that our overseeing body looks a little bit different, but we will remain the church as we are today. So I don't see any of that happening, and so just wanted to throw that out there too. I don't know what the future brings, but Lovely Lane will still do the great things that we're doing. We just might have a little different, again, grouping that we overall report to or connect with there. And giving to the general fund has been fine. I think I've mentioned that the last few weeks. Giving to the general fund has been fine, but the costs have gone up just to do ministry here in the church. Cost of staffing and just our own building. We got through winter, and just the cost to have snow removal and sand and salt, filling in potholes. So that's kind of what I find with our capital campaign going on. One tier, you've got the other tier that's the general fund, and it's continued to be costly to do ministry. The giving has been good, so thank you all for being faithful with that, but we've got to keep finding ways to get our apportionments paid, that kind of thing, because we want to be fully Methodist, that type of stuff. So those are some challenges that we face. Finance Committee met a couple of weeks ago just to say, how do we continue to encourage people to give and keep our costs down, that type of stuff, and we're still having those conversations, but there's a lot of things that go into what's going on. So don't know if that was helpful, but a couple of things that are on my mind, but those matters.
Any other questions, thoughts?
I think.
Oh, yes, sir.
I think one of the biggest questions everybody's got, I know it's mine anyway, is the financial end of it. So if we get 100% participation of the 47% that give to the budget of the church, weekly, monthly. So of that 47% of the $2.9 million for this project, we get $1.9 million. The question is, the $1 million that we do not have funded for the total project. Can you talk a little bit about where that comes from?
So that's what Matt had alluded to earlier, is that we have other sources we need to tap. We have more people we need to talk to, so that'll help a little bit. We have some other ways we want to connect with folks. But eventually it may come to a situation where we need financing. And for some people, that's a dirty word. I don't think a loan is a bad deal. We might need, we get into the weeds on this because we talk about this all the time. But there may come a point where, as we look at cash flow, we're working on mapping out, we know when gifts are coming based on what people said they give weekly, monthly, etc. We may need a small construction loan because we know the pledges are coming in and we got to get the work done at that time. There may come a time when we need to talk about a loan to finish it out. So that's on the table.
And I would say that that'll be, this is not a one meeting and we're done. This is going to be something that we're going to continue to talk about and focus on for the next, as we go through this design phase. Because, I'll just put a personal angle on it. Amber and I pray about it quite often, about how do you relate those two things, right? On leaning forward and being an open, being a very accommodating church that welcomes people that may be on the margins, right? To be able to come here and find a safe space to worship, a family atmosphere to be able to worship, a safe place for their kids. But we do feel these constraints, right? There are constraints that we're going to have to work through. And our mission is to make sure that we're properly informing everybody. No one here wants to do financing. If we have to do that, we're going to go into it eyes wide open. Okay? So. Okay. I think maybe the one final thought before we wrap things up is we're going to continue to inform. Our promise to you is on this quarterly basis be able to do something like this, whether it's a church meeting or a video or something that talks about our progress. The other commitment I would make is Scott raised it up appropriately in a conversation we just recently had, which was We're in a unique position here as a church where we're talking about growth. We're talking about welcoming more folks. We're in a unique mission opportunity here between Kennedy High School and Pierce Elementary on this very important corridor. It's exciting to be able to talk about us growing and moving forward as opposed to struggling to survive as many churches are out there. So please go forward praying for our committees as we make these decisions and we keep you informed, and just prayer in general about the mission of our church and how we're reaching out to everyone.
And pray about how you can be involved, because as you saw, we have lots of room that we need help with. So.
Yeah, I'll just add what Matt is saying. A lot of churches are envious. I mean, we get to move forward. A lot of churches right now are just trying to keep their doors open. You know, they're having to go from a full-time pastor to a part-time pastor to a quarter-time pastor. They're aligning with another church. You know, we are a really rare church that is growing. It is moving forward. We're able to have 2 full-time pastors and do a building project like this in the midst of some of the uncertainty with their denomination. We're moving forward, and I think this is great. We're doing it on faith, and I think we need to feel good that God is moving us forward, and a lot of prayer with it all. But it's great to be a part of a church that's lively and dynamic. I mean, we are not trying to just keep our doors open. We are boldly moving forward. I think we need to celebrate that and lift it up.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's lunchtime, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Eric, myself. You can connect to us via email or through Scott and Jenny. Happy to have your participation, and we do need your all's participation. So, thank you.
And let's thank everybody here with their work.